welcome to Forte Catholic. This is your host, Taylor Schroll. I'm in a great mood today. I'm real tired, though, but I'm using all my last energy just for you. We are actually pre-recording this show today, because if you are listening to this live on Tuesday night, I am actually at our junior high summer camp called Camp Basic in Ledbetter, Texas. I am currently either having a ton of fun with junior high kids or I'm absolutely exhausted, one of the two. But I love summer camp. I love events like this. It's part of my job to, with the Blaze Ministries, to lead events like this. So I really do look forward to these events throughout the year. So that's where I am, but we always joke whenever I pre-record, this is the only way that I can bilocate. So I am currently in Ledbetter, Texas. I'm also currently in your ears as you listen to me on the radio, or if you're joining on the podcast. Welcome. It's great to have you here with me tonight. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about joy and fun and what that has to do with church, what that has to do with things like this church camp, how we do pre-evangelization and evangelization, how that leads into these things like catechesis and discipleship, and then the mission of the church, things that we're more readily used to, right? Things that we've been around more. Like if you grew up around the church, you hear a lot of catechesis. We all get taught things in RE, growing up, going to youth group, these types of things. But discipleship has begun to grow a little bit more. And it's kind of one of those Catholic buzzwords the past few years or so, like really getting people, taking them from these just learning things in their head, this catechesis things, to connecting that to their life. Like how can they actually be a follower of Christ? And then we're like semi-decent at mission. I mean, the Catholic Church is the biggest missionary organization in the entire world, the biggest charitable organization in the entire world. So we get that. Where I think we need the most help is evangelization, and then even more help in pre-evangelization. So evangelization is like the initial proclamation of the gospel. Like that God loves you and has a plan for your life. That sin entered the world and wrecked that plan. But God loved us so much and he wanted to restore that individual plan. There was nothing that we could do about it on our own. So God became man. And so it's so funny. Some of you might have heard this story before, but you've never heard it told this way. Imagine God, the Trinity. We just celebrated Trinity Sunday pretty recently. Imagine the Trinity up in heaven, and they're there in the beginning, like, oh, let's create this universe, let's create this world, and then that happens, and then the original sin happens, and then they're all looking at each other like, all right, we want to restore this relationship with humanity, but one of us is going to have to go down to earth because those humans can't. They've created this void that they can't fill, so one of us is going to have to go down. And I can just see like the Father and the Holy Spirit looking at Jesus like, well, it's not going to be me. It's not going to be me. So I feel like what they did is just like kids do. They draw straws, right? And Jesus drew the short stick and had to, being God, had to leave heaven and come down as a man and ultimately die, right? So it's like, well, the Father got to stay in heaven and the Spirit got to stay in heaven. And they didn't have to go through the suffering and death. But I say that tongue-in-cheek, obviously, because Jesus wanted to come and restore. That's kind of the whole point of this gospel story, right? That God wanted to come and restore this relationship with us. And so he did. He died for our sins. He reunited us with the Father, gave us this great opportunity to respond to him in love, to confess with our mouths, believe with our lips, and live a life for God, to join his church and to be a part of this Christian life. So, like, we get evangelization, like, I can do that in my sleep, right? I've heard it a ton of times, but what's really interesting is the whole point of evangelization is to go make new Catholics, right? It's to go bring people in, to go out to people who haven't heard this message, who haven't internalized this message, and to bring them in so that they can be catechized, so they can become disciples of Christ, so that they can go out and be and live in the mission of the church. there's this primary, this first step that we so often miss though. Even in youth ministry, we talk about this all the time. It's like, okay, we do evangelization, catechesis, we do discipleship. We'll meet one-on-one with kids to like walk with them in their Christian life. We'll do evangelization retreats. We'll do catechesis and evangelization on our youth nights. We'll have mission trips and service projects so they can get involved in the life of the church. But what are we doing to reach those kids who don't come to church? We did some research recently. It's like, what percentage of just Catholic kids in the Bryan College Station area are we reaching? And it was pretty low. Like of all the parishes that Ablaze works in, at St. Thomas Aquinas, like all this whole Bryan College Station area, what percentage of kids who identify as Catholic in the public schools and the Catholic schools and the Christian schools, whatever, what percent of them are we getting at youth group? And across the, like, it's less than 10%, I think, across the board. And it's like, oh my gosh, we have to do something for pre-evangelization. Like, how can we get kids in the door? Because most kids, it's pretty obvious, won't just come to Mass, won't just come to a youth night. They need to be invited to something different. They need to be invited to something that's pre-evangelization. Like, okay, so what does that look like? It looks like inviting them in the summer to an open gym of basketball. It means inviting them to like there was one great example. We went to this training, and this guy was telling us that one thing that they did, it was kind of a small Texas town, so like a lot of the towns that this station reaches, and it's like there was a lot of kids who wanted to learn about cars. So what they did is, like, there's two older gentlemen in the parish, and they were really good at working on cars. So what they did is they just invited area kids, not just the Catholic kids. They invited just area kids who were interested in learning about how to work on cars. And they had a car shop, and every Saturday morning they would work on cars together for like an hour or two, and then they'd leave. Notice what I missed in there. I didn't say they prayed. I didn't say that they taught them, made some connection between working on a car and God working on your heart or something, right? They literally just came, worked on cars, and then they left. So how is that pre-evangelization? It's like, okay, so after a few weeks, few months, whatever, whenever a kid seemed like he was comfortable, they would say, okay, like these two men are, like they would say, like, okay, we're from local parish, St. Michael's or St. Joseph's or whatever. This is the parish that we're from. We've really enjoyed this time getting to know you. We'll still love to see you on Saturday mornings, but like, would you like to come to this Bible study that we're holding, or to this youth event that we're holding at the church? And it's an invitation because they've already built that relationship with these kids. They've done this pre-evangelization before they even bring in the story of the gospel. They've just built relationships with people and showed them that they cared, right? It's that old saying that kids are really anybody. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. It's the same kind of idea. It's like, okay, like you just woke up on your Saturday morning, you gave your Saturday morning to hang out with us and teach us how to build cars. You're an all right dude. So I might actually say yes if you invite me to come to church, right? And so even then, there was another example that he shared of these these ladies that would teach girls like how to knit, how to do certain just other types of things, right? That they would come on same type of thing. They'd come on Saturday morning, taught them how to knit, taught them how to make clothes, like all this kind of stuff that the girls were interested in. And the youth minister walked up, so like, don't proselytize them, like don't, just be with them, love on them, share your time with them, share your gifts with them, and then we'll go from there. And at some point, this is just the entryway, the gateway to introduce these kids to people that care about them, people that care about God, and then connecting that into, okay, now we can share the gospel with people. Because like, I've been a Christian my whole life. Every time I see somebody like preaching on the street, I laugh. Like, it's hilarious. It's like, how often does that actually work? Now, God can do whatever the heck he wants, and I'm sure there's been some story of like some guy walking along the street and he heard some guy preach on the street and his life was changed, right? I'm sure that happens. That's not the primary way that people come to God, right? So this pre-evangelization is a key thing that we often miss. So this Camp Basic that I'm actually currently on right now, that's the goal of this thing. The goal of this thing is pre-evangelization and then moving into a little bit of evangelization. Like the goal this week isn't discipleship, isn't like helping these kids grow deeper in their relationship with God. It's not to send them on mission to go do service for people. Our main thing that we want to do, like here's an example day for us. We'll wake up, we'll have breakfast, we'll do a Bible study in the morning for 20 minutes, look into the scripture, and then we're going to go play. We're going to play volleyball. We're going to go on a blob. If you don't know what a blob is, do yourself a favor and look it up on YouTube right now. It's so much fun. One dude, or a guy, or one person stands on this platform, and it's this long, essentially this 20-foot balloon that's in the water, and somebody jumps off the platform while somebody else is sitting on the edge of this big balloon-looking thing. And whenever that person jumps off the platform and lands on the blob, that other person goes skyrocketing into the air, and it's an absolute blast. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be swimming and playing volleyball. I forget all the things that I already listed, so I'm just going to keep saying stuff. Like, we're just going to have so much fun. And then at the end of the night, then we'll do some events. After hours and hours, like playing from 10 a.m. and then we'll eat lunch, and then we'll play all afternoon until 5 o'clock. We'll eat dinner. We'll play another big game together. And then we'll go in, and each night a different youth minister is going to share the gospel with them. Share how Jesus loves them. Share what a Christian looks like. Share the freedom that Christ brings. And then on the last night that we're there, we're making an invitation for people to give their life to Christ, to commit to living this Christian life, right? So most of these kids are church kids, but there are a lot of them that, like, at this camp, at camps I've been around before, this is the biggest thing that people invite their friends to. Most kids aren't going to invite their friends to Mass because it's like, well, if you've never been to Mass before, it's kind of an odd thing, right? A lot of us grew up around it and we get it. But I've brought some of my Protestant friends to Mass before, and half the Mass I'm explaining to them what they're doing. They're elbowing me in the ribs. Why is that guy wearing a dress? And I'm like, don't worry about it. We'll talk later. If you didn't get that reference, that's the priest wearing his priest scarf. Why is he wearing pink? It's not pink, it's rose. Never mind, it doesn't matter, right? But the whole point of this is that it's pre-evangelization, something they can invite their friends to. And all I want from these kids is to say two things at the end of the week, or something along these lines. Man, I had a blast at church camp. I want them to have fun. I want them to associate church with fun, to associate hanging out with other Christians as being a fun thing, as a good thing for their life. And then the second thing that I do want them to be evangelized. I do want them to look back on this church camp and say, that's the day, that's the week that I truly committed my life to Christ. Because for a lot of us, like, my big conversion was at a Steubenville youth conference. For so many friends, I hear people's testimonies all the time where they share, like, it was a Steubenville conference, it was a mission trip, it was a net retreat, it was a summer camp. It's like, it was big events that happened in the summer. And I think the reason that they are so impactful is that we do a lot of this pre-evangelization. We spend time together in Christian community. So that's the goal for this week. And so what does that mean for you guys? Like, if you're listening to this on Tuesday night or on the podcast, you're probably not at a church camp. But what does this mean for you? So often we meet people and we try to catechize them. We try to teach them the depths of the faith that we know, because we've been Catholic for X amount of years. We've been listening to Catholic radio. We've been going to Mass. We've been going to this retreat or whatever. We have all this Catholic knowledge, and it's a good thing to want to share that. But so often we try to meet people where we are instead of where they are. So if there's a person that you're talking to, you're like, man, this person really needs Jesus. That's a definite thing. But what methods are we going to use in our daily lives, in our regular relationships, to share the gospel with people? Like, if there's somebody at your work who is showing some openness to Jesus and they want to talk to you about it, it's probably because you've already done some pre-evangelization. You've built a relationship with them. You've showed that they cared in some way. So an example of this would be like, somebody, a coworker of yours, has somebody in their life pass away or they lose their job or something like that, and they come to you because they're like, I don't know what it is, but you always have this peace about you. I just trust you for some reason. And you've already built up that relationship, and you can say, well, that's the first time you can evangelize, by sharing your story. It's like where my joy and my hope come from. It's from my relationship with God. It's from like, I know that bad things happen, but I always have my church community. I go to church at St. Joseph's. Would you like to come to a Bible study with me? Would you like to go to Mass with me? And then we can go out to lunch and talk about whatever the issue is, right? These things just to show people that we truly care. And then we walk through this thing. Like St. Paul says it. He talks about how, I forget what letter it is, but he's writing a letter to this church. He's like, you used to start like you used to be a baby in the faith. You used to drink milk, just like kids drink milk whenever they're kids, whenever they're real young, right? Whenever they're babies. That's the word, babies. I said kids whenever they're kids. That would be not. What great distinction, Taylor. You should have a radio show because you're so good with words. I said 3 people ever. I guess 3 people. Somebody had to say yes. But let's get back on topic. The whole point of this is that people who are new in the faith, you're not going to feed a baby a steak. That's just not how you're going to feed them. You're going to give them milk. And then as they grow older, then you can start giving them more solid food. You start giving them those, little whipped up sweet potatoes or whatever. And then at some point they start eating chicken. And then look, you get to be 27 like me, and you eat a chicken fried steak and 3 sides for lunch like I did today. It was real good. But the whole point of this is that a lot of times we try to feed people the steak because we're practicing Catholics. We listen to Catholic radio. We're listening to this podcast. Like, we care about our faith. We've been around the church for a while, and we try to feed people what we just received. When so often we have to remember where we were before our conversion, before we started caring about our faith. Whether you were a kid or an adult, like wherever it was, what worked for you? Was it somebody who came and shared the faith with you? Was it somebody that just cared about you and you knew it, so you trusted them? What was it for you? So be thinking about that in your daily life. Be praying for us today, this week, as we are at camp. We're there for a couple of more days. Keep us in your prayers so that these kids can have fun and that they can come to meet Jesus. We will be right back in just a second. All right, so we are here in the studio for our second segment with a surprise guest. And by that, normally I mean surprise for you, the audience. This surprise guest is actually a surprise that she is on. She came to have a meeting in the office today, and I was like, hey, you know what? We should have you on the air. So Vern Laborde is here in the studio today. Vern, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Just chilling,
Yeah, you definitely are just chilling. You have no idea what you're doing here. So
I don't.
So you came in to have a meeting about this place called Deer Creek Camp. That is a very special place in the heart of both you and I. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what camp is? What is Deer Creek Camp?
Deer Creek Camp is a camp in Medina, Texas. So that's like in the Texas Hill Country, about an hour and 15 minutes from San Antonio. It's beautifully set in there, like in a valley. And so it's a Christian summer camp, and we offer camp for about 8 weeks for kids that range through the age of 7 to 18. And we have different camps that we offer. We offer like a leadership camp for high school kids, and it's called Leadership in Action. And they do a separate trip from camp, and it's super cool. This summer they're going to Pedernales Falls, like outside of Austin. And it's really beautiful. And so we're really excited for them to do that. And we also have day camp, which is for the local kids around Medina, around Kerrville, Bandera too. And they come, and that's for 2 weeks. And they come every single day, but they go home in the evening. So it's all the fun of camp without like staying the night. So it's an intro for them to get to learn camp and learn how it functions. And so that's usually like, they're like, the youngest would probably be 5 years old. And they are so funny and so cute. And then we have regular AC weeks, which are venture camp weeks, and that's 1 week. And then we offer 2-week camps. And so it's just a lot of different options. Catholic Adventure Week is our new one. That's new from last summer. And so it's an opportunity for us to minister to specifically Catholic denominations. And it's because we're close to San Antonio, and that has a predominantly large Catholic population. And we offer mass and daily adoration. And it's just really cool to allow these Catholic campers to kind of make their faith their own and learn just how to have fun and learn how to have a relationship with Christ, while still knowing and learning about Mass and Catholic traditions and doing all of that, but also putting them outside and in God's creation and like having fun with counselors and mentors and all those people, because it's so easy just to get caught up in the church life and going to school and doing that and forgetting about the real relationships that happen with your faith. And so I love camp. I could talk about it forever. So I rambled for a long time, but
we actually are going to talk about it for the next 7 hours. We've cleared all of our other programming. We're just going to listen to you talk about camp.
I'll tell all my stories of all my campers.
Yeah, some of them you might not be able to share on radio.
No, definitely not.
So Medina, Texas, the grand metropolis. How many people are in Medina? It's
my goodness.
I think when people go out to camp for stuff, I think it's because I think the entire town like triples in population.
Yes, it definitely does. It's called, I think it's the Apple capital of Texas. And
for those of you listening, you know that I like Apple products. She's not talking about like Mac apples.
No.
She's talking about like actual apples that people eat.
Yes, we have an Apple store, and everybody always mistakes it for like a Mac. And we're like, no, you can't buy an iPhone or a MacBook there. It's like an Apple store. Like they sell Apple ice cream and burgers and all this stuff because it's near an apple orchard. And so it's like, oh, we're going to go to Apple store for lunch. And like, they serve food there? It's like, okay, it's not the same Apple store you're thinking of.
Very confusing.
Yes.
There's no iPads here? No,
Nope.
No, sir. Just Apple ice cream, Apple sandwiches,
Yes.
Apple, literally everything.
It's so good though.
It really is. I didn't think I was going to like apple ice cream, and I finally went one summer because
Staple.
I haven't even mentioned yet. The reason I loved camp so much is because I actually worked there for a couple of summers, and then like when I was in college, I would go to class Monday through Thursday, and then Friday through Sunday, I'd drive up to Medina from San Antonio, like an hour, 15 hour, 30 minutes, depending on traffic. Then it could be 4 hours.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I would, I'd drive up there, go do crazy manual labor on the weekends. We were just talking about a couple of them off air. Like I probably should be dead, but I'm not. I'm here and talking to you about how much I love.
Yes,
Deep
by the
Creek
grace
Camp.
of God.
But by the grace of God, yeah. There. We used to always say there's like a dome of prayer covering that camp, because there's so many things that should go wrong that absolutely don't.
No.
It's a great, wonderful place. So, whenever people like going on, like when you're scheduling your vacation, you're looking at the hotels, you want to see the amenities, right? So what are the amenities out at Deer Creek Camp?
The amenities are super great. We have a lot. So we have all the cabins are air conditioned, and in the wintertime, because we offer retreat groups that come out there during the off season. So we always say they're air conditioned, and they also have a heater because it gets pretty cold out there in Medina.
Yeah, it also gets really hot in the summer.
Yes.
It's like 120 degrees.
Yes,
so
and so the camper's like, I don't want the heater. You're like, we're not going to give you a heater. You're fine. You have an AC. You're perfect. And so all the cabins are nice and cool during the summer. And we have we call it the Great Hall, and it's our meeting area. And that's where the kitchen is, and that's where we have praise and worship time. It's beautiful in there, like all of it's cedar wood that's been stained, and there's a stage with lights, and where we have our praise and worship team go, and it's a nice like central hub of camp. And then we have we call it the Deer Dome, which is okay. So Deer Creek Camp, we have deer around, but we don't focus on the deer aspect. But a lot of things are named after just deer in general. So we have the Deer Dome, which is our covered basketball court. And it's nice because when it rains, we like to do rainy day programming in there. So you're still outside and you still get to hear like all the rain and smell it and all that stuff, but you're covered and you're not getting wet. But we also have like our closing ceremonies under there. So it's just it's in a perfect spot of camp where you can just see the hills and get out of the sun and not be burning. And then we have the barn swing, which is I don't know how to explain it. It's like a swing that it's
a swing in a barn.
In a barn, but you have to like jump off a platform to like do the swing. So you go pretty high and you go in a circle and it's so much fun. But if you're afraid of heights, like some people just get super nervous on it. And you like, I love being up there because I'm just like talking them through. I'm like, hey, you can do this. If you do a swing, like you swing on a swing set, just in general, it's just exactly like that, except a little different. It's a little bit higher and a little bit faster.
Everything like it is the same, except for the fact that it's all different, except for the word swing.
You get to jump off a platform. It's totally fine.
So you're a better counselor than I was. I would just be like, oh, it's going to be okay. And then I'd push them off the edge.
No, because like they're holding on and you're like, I don't want you to let go. So always hold on. They wear a helmet, so it's totally fine. It's safe. 100%.
Like we said, grace of prayer covers this place.
Yes. And for the younger campers, we put them in a harness and attach them to the swing so they have no way of like falling off of it. But for an older kid, like it's given. You hold on to a swing when you go. So we have that. And we also have a high rope course attached to it. And that's for our younger campers. And it's called Floating Islands. So they climb up a pole, walk across a horizontal pole that's like kind of inclined, like not holding on to anything. So they're tethered and they're being belayed by their counselors, but they have to walk across this pole. And I kid you not, that would probably be the scariest thing for some of these kids. And some of them like will like sit on it and like scooch. And you're like, okay, whatever works for you. And this, as long as you're succeeding, we're happy. But they walk across that and they go across these floating islands and then they go on a tightrope walk and then they go down a little zip line that we have for them. So it's like an introductory to our big zip line for like the older kids. And so that zip line has a rock wall and a vertical playground attached to it. So in order to ride the zip line, you have to make it up one of those obstacle courses. Cause I know some zip lines at other camps, like you walk upstairs and it's just like a ride.
Yeah. They cheat.
Yeah. This is like, you have to earn your right to go down the zip line. And it's the best feeling ever because you're exhausted after you climbed up this like obstacle course and you're sweating and you're like, I'm so scared right now. But it's like, hey, the next part of this is the easiest part. All you have to do is sit and enjoy the ride. And campers love it. And I love working at the top of that too because you get to talk them through it and ask them like how it was climbing up there. And they learn a lot about themselves on these high rope courses. And it's just really cool. And we also have a leap of faith, which is other people know it's like a pamper pole.
Yeah, that's real.
It's one of my favorites too, but it's also one of the ones that terrifies me the most because you go up there. All of these things are belayed too, so it's all safe. Like you're attached to a counselor and they're taking you up there. You're never just free climbing any of this.
You just put all the parents at ease. They're like, wait, they're just going to climb up a pole 40 feet and jump off?
No. You are attached
to the ropes.
If you don't catch it,
I'm sorry.
No, you're attached to all these ropes and it's all 100% safe. And so with the leap of faith, you climb up the pole and you get on like a little mini platform. It's like a little box. So we give that as like a nice amenity because some pamper poles just have a pole. There's no platform on it. So you have to stand on top of just like the top of the pole. No, we have a little box. So it's nice and easy. So you get on top of that and then you have a partner that climbs up next. And so you have to help them get onto this box because it's super tiny. It's literally big enough for just 4 feet.
Like I've been on it. Like it's not, when I'm on it with my big old feet, it's not big enough for 4 feet. It's like 2.5.
And then
so like
the person's like scrunched up.
Yeah, I'm like
side.
hugging this dude. That's all.
And you're like, it's okay. It's okay. We just gotta get off. And so yeah, you have a partner up there. And that's what I like about it. I love that aspect because I've been on Leap of Faiths where it's just you by yourself. And that's so much more intimidating than not having a partner with you. Because when you have a partner up there, it's someone to talk to, someone who's in the same boat as you. And it's just, oh my goodness. But you're up there and you have nothing because the ropes are behind you. So you're attached and everything tied in from behind. And so you're literally standing up there with your hands on your knees, just looking out. And you're like, the pole is shaking and it's just, everything's so terrifying. You see the trapeze in front of you and you're just like, okay, we just got to jump and reach our arms out and hopefully we grab it. And if we don't, you're fine. Again, you're being caught by your counselor. So you're good. But it's just still so nerve wracking. But it's called the leap of faith because in life you take leaps of faith in everything. And so it's scary and it's terrifying at times, but you have to trust that you're going to be caught. Like God will catch you. He's looking out for you. He knows, but you can't see it because again, the ropes are behind you and you have nothing to hold on to and it just looks like nothing's going to catch you, but it always does. You're always safe. And it's just, I love the metaphor that it has with that. And you'll have people with you that are in the same boat that are talking you through it, that are holding your hand. and you're like, you just feel that comfort in it. And so it's, I guess, one of my favorites because of the connection it draws with your relationship with Christ, and just seeing the kids come out of it afterwards, like terrified, but they're so grateful that they did it, because it takes a lot of courage to get up there. And so we have other ones too, but again, those are my favorites.
Yeah, no, for real. Like going to camp. It was at a camp that I grew up going to, and then my time at Deer Creek as a counselor. It was doing the leap of faith. I used to be deathly afraid of heights, and I felt like a little girl. No offense. Everywhere I went, like I really did. And like I started doing the leap of faith. The first time I ever did it, like I was like, the pole was going back and forth like crazy. I'm a big dude. There's a lot of weight up there. So like I finally did it, and I caught it. I was like, oh, that was easy, right? And like a lot of the same connections you made. It's like things look very difficult, but if you just try
and do it,
they're number one, they're either easier than you thought they were, or they're just as hard, but you're gonna get caught and you'll be fine. The second thing I learned on doing high ropes was that I weigh a lot. So like me trying to get this big old body up a rock wall, it took me like 30 minutes, and I got up there and just like
fell on the ground.
Yeah,
like,
I was exhausted.
I'm tired.
They just like strapped me to and then the other thing, it was so funny because you were talking about the joy of going down the zip line. I weigh so much that when I go down the zip line, at the end of the zip line, I can actually take 3 steps on the ground because it's pulling it down so much. It's a lot of fun.
So usually we don't have campers like that big. So it's like these campers are 7 years old.
They don't have fat campers is what she said. But in all seriousness, it's like you were talking about the connection just with the leap of faith, right? The connection to our faith. And that's what I love so much about Deer Creek. Every activity we do, whether it's basketball or eating or jumping off of a platform or doing all the low ropes or high ropes things, there's always this connection to the faith. And like, it's so funny because people be like, oh, camp's just fun, right? Yeah. It's just a time to hang out. And like people have these intense experiences with Christ, these intense realizations of, oh, like this is what this small, low ropes course actually means, right? So what, like, if parents want to send their kids to Deer Creek Camp, what's the main goal that you want for these kids?
The main goal is that we want them to understand, like we want them to get it. So our main mission is portraying the gospel to them, not just through devos or Bible studies or like, cause you can get that anywhere. You get that in school sometimes if you go to a private school. But it's through relationships. So we want to show them the gospel through our actions, through the love, through the fun and the activities. And so like our like I said, our mission is to just portray that to them. And so we want them to walk away from camp having a better understanding of their relationship with Christ so that they can go out and show that to their friends and minister to those people in their lives. And as camp, because we only get these kids for a week, their parents have them for the other 51 weeks.
There you go.
There I was like, what the hell? 52 weeks in a year. They get their parents have them for the other 51 weeks of the year, and we only get them for one. And so our mission is just to show them that love and then have the parents kind of cultivate it afterwards. And so it's not, we're not the only people working in their lives. Like they have mentors, they have family members, they have aunts, uncles, friends, teachers, principals, all of those people in their lives. And our job is just to help them identify what these people are trying to do for them, as opposed to just like parents, if like they correct you on something or make you wash dishes. It's not because they don't like you. It's like, no. They're just trying to help you become a better person and understand responsibility. And so they listen to us because they're in a different environment than with their parents at home or in school learning from a teacher. It's like they're outside at camp playing around, and we're like teenage kids talking to them about Jesus and about having fun, and they're more apt to listen. And so we just want them to walk away knowing that God loves them and that they can have a relationship with him and that they can show and share that love with other people. Because it's not just something they keep to themselves. We want them to show it off, and then we want them to like spread it to everybody else. We want them to have this feeling that they want their friends to have as well. And so it's just letting them do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I absolutely love camp. And like just you being here the last 30 minutes or so has just brought back so many great memories of camp. I absolutely love Deer Creek. So if people want more information or want to sign up, all these great things, where can they find Deer Creek online? How can they do that?
Literally all you have to do is Google search Deer Creek Camp, or Christian camps in Texas, because I think we're like one of like the top 5 on
There
Google
you
right
go.
now. Yeah, we pay for that spot, so just use it. But
We pay for fourth. We don't have enough money for first through
No.
third. We pay for fourth.
Those are the bigger camps. Like,
Yeah.
so Deer Creek camp is small, and which is what I love about it. It's, we have about probably around 100 to 150 campers a week, which means that the camper to counselor ratio is so much smaller. That means they get a better connection with people, and that they know other people in their week. Like, that's not just in their cabin. They get to know the older campers, the younger campers. We like to integrate all of them together so you feel like a family. You don't feel like you're only with your cabin all the time and that's only the people you know and meet at camp. No, you're talking to everyone. You have meals with everyone. And so, and with the staff too, like we hire about 40 counselors. And so they, at the end of the summer, like you feel like everyone is related. You feel like you're bonded for life. And it's harder to get that at a bigger camp. And so Deer Creek, it's just so familial and I love it. But yeah, so you go to deercreekcamp.com. Super easy, super simple. And you can click register if you want to register your kid, or if you want to become a counselor, you just go to how do I become a counselor section, and we'll talk you through all of it. And so
Yeah, that's great. Some of the best years of my life. So go check it out. deercreekcamp.com. Vern, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
you're welcome. I love this.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you later. Alrighty. We are back for our third segment of Forte Catholic for today. I want to thank Vern for coming on the air. That was recorded a few weeks ago, and I figured it would fit well since we are at summer camp, and they're currently in their Catholic Adventure Week at summer camp. So, again, keep us in your prayers. The Blaze Ministries summer camp out at Cooper Farm, and be praying for those friends at Deer Creek. I absolutely loved my time out there. That place has a very special place in my heart. So if you're just joining us, in the first segment, I was talking about like why do things like summer camp, for this whole idea of pre-evangelization and evangelization. And then we have things like Catholic radio and going to mass and going to like parish missions and these kind of things that are catechesis to teach us things to grow in our faith, right? And so one of the things that we're challenging these kids to do at the end of the week is to commit their lives to God. And we're going to be talking about what does that actually mean? What does committing your life to God mean? So I'm not going to go into all the details, but one of the action items that comes out of that is to actually have a prayer relationship with God. So we're going to be praying with them all week, showing them how, modeling that for them. And then we're going to say like, okay, you're going back home. Like camp's over. Oh, that's sad. What are you going to do? What are you going to do next? Right. The same thing that we did at camp. Praying by yourself for 5-10 minutes. Like we'll have Bible study, then we'll let them go pray by themselves for 5-10 minutes in the morning, and we'll pray together at night. You're cool. So it's like, okay, how can you model that? How can you do that same kind of thing once you go home from camp? It's like, okay, we can pray together by going to mass, and then we can pray by ourselves. And like these are 6th through 8th graders, so we don't expect them to be praying 8 hours a day. Like do 5, 10, 15 minutes, right? That's a pretty basic, no pun intended, camp basic. Pretty basic request of a junior high kid. Say your morning prayers, say your night prayers, that sort of thing. Tell God what's going on in your heart. So I did want to share with you a couple of things like on this topic of prayer, because I think it's a great reminder, even for those of us who have been catechized, who are trying to live as disciples, as true followers of Christ. So often we need the reminder of the importance of our life of prayer. And so I was actually in. We were having our staff prayer with the Blaze Ministries a couple of days ago, and this story came up in Exodus. So it's a story you may be familiar with. It's one of those ones that you might have heard before, you might not have. So it's from the Battle of Amalek, and I think the main reason I'm going to read this is so I can have fun reading crazy names from the Old Testament. But so I'm gonna go through it with you, and then I'm gonna share with you what it means for our prayer life. So then Amalek came and waged war against Israel. So Amalek is the bad guy. Israel is the chosen people of God. So Moses said to Joshua, who was like his second in command, choose some men from among us, and tomorrow go out and engage Amalek in battle. I will be standing on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So this is the same staff that he used to like part the sea so that they could walk through and be saved. So the staff like represents God's power, right? So like it wasn't Moses. Moses wasn't a magician. He didn't part the seas on his own power. But God, because like God asked him, like, hey, put the staff down and I'm going to make the waters come out. But he still waited until Moses actually did it. So we're going to have a similar theme here in this story. So Joshua did as Moses told him. He engaged Amalek in battle while Moses, Aaron, and Hur, H-U-R, climbed to the top of the hill. As long as Moses kept his hands raised, Israel had the better of the fight. But when he let his hands rest, Amalek had the better of the fight. And so I was reading this, and it was one of those things that I've heard this. I've heard this story before, maybe a few times. It's not one of the most popular stories in the Bible, but just picture this. Picture yourself out on this mountain. Your friends are down in the valley fighting, and if you have your hands up holding this staff, he's praying for them. Like he's praying on behalf of these people. He's not a magician. He's praying on behalf of these people and lifting them up in prayer. Whenever he's doing that, they're winning. Whenever his arms start to fall, they start losing the battle. So think about like the reality of that. When they're losing the battle, what does it mean to be losing in a war? People are dying, right? And that's so crazy, like the immense impact that Moses' prayer has. Now, I don't think if I pray or I don't pray, I don't think it's like life or death for thousands of people out on a battlefield. But what it does tell me is that my prayer is important, that my prayer has power. And like if that doesn't encourage me to do my prayer whenever I don't want to, then I don't know what will. Because if you think about it, Moses could have been like, I'm done praying for the day, and lower his arms, and then they would have lost. But even when it was difficult, Moses still held up his hands and prayed, or at least tried his best to. But still, his hands were dipping. So the next verse says, Moses' hands, however, grew tired, so they, Aaron and Hur, they took a rock and put it under him, and he sat on it. It's very nice of them, very practical, right? Meanwhile, Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady until sunset. And Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the sword. It's like, oh my goodness, so they won. But God wanted Moses to be involved in this. He also wanted Joshua to be involved in this. And he also wanted Aaron and Hur to be involved in this. So it's interesting how God called these people to do different things to accomplish this goal. He wanted Moses to, as the leader of the people of God, to be the primary person praying for them. So if you think about what this looks like in the church, the Pope, his primary job is to lead and to pray for his people. You think about the pastor in a parish. His primary job is to lead us in prayer, is to lead us in the sacraments, right? And then I think about this, like even on who's the priest of the home. It's the father. So like the father's primary job is to be leading and praying for his family. But Moses isn't alone in this. He has Aaron and Hur to help him whenever he starts to fall. So I think, what does this mean for me? What does it mean for you? It means that there are going to be times where you really want to pray. Moses stood up there by himself with his hands raised for quite a while because they were winning the battle. And then, but at some point, his arms started to dip. Even though he knew the impact of his prayer, he was literally watching in front of him the impact of his prayer. Winning when my hands are up, losing when my arms dip. So even though he knew the impact of his prayer, he still was slipping. There are things that are like physically. There's always going to be some things that happen to us that are going to make us want to stop praying. Whether it's we're tired because our son kept us up till 2 a.m. the last 2 nights. That's not personal at all. That's totally what happened the last 2 nights. Whether it's we're sick, that's a big one for me. When I get sick, it's really hard for me to pray. I'm just like, I just want to sleep and sulk. Or if something bad happens in your life, you get fired, you fail a test, your girlfriend breaks up with you, whatever it is, these outer things can make it harder for us to pray. So in that moment where it was hard for Moses, who did he have? He had Aaron, the chief priest, and Hur, one of his other closest friends and leaders, to be there with him to help him whenever he was falling. This is what Christian community is for. There are going to be times where I am like feeling super holy and wanting to pray all the time. And there's a ton of other times where I don't feel like I want to pray and I don't feel like I want to be the good Catholic, the good Christian that God wants me to be. This is why it's great for me to have people in my life, my wife, my friends, the men's Bible study I'm in, my coworkers, to be able to call me on my crap whenever I'm not doing what I need to be doing. And to be able to help and to love me through that. That's what Aaron and Hur did. They helped him in the practical. Whenever Moses was struggling, they helped him in the practical things. So whenever there are practical things happening to you, who do you have that can hold you accountable to doing the things that you know that you're called to do, even though you know that they're good, but things happen and they get more difficult to do? And then also there are times where we're called to be like Joshua, to trust the leaders, to trust God, to trust the Pope, to trust the church, that even if we don't understand why we're in this battle, how we're in this battle, just like Joshua, like he still was like, I'm going to go fight this battle. And God called all of them to do those things. So one of the things that I'm praying through for myself, that I want to pray for you, is to find this balance of like, when am I supposed to be Moses? When am I supposed to take time away? Even when there's a battle going on down below me, when everything's going crazy in my life, when do I need to pull away and pray? Or maybe we're like Aaron and Hur. How can we in our daily lives look at our friends whenever they're struggling and be able to help them, to be the Christian community that they need? And it was interesting because as we were reading this story, I thought about another time in the Bible where people were supposed to be helping somebody else pray. I think of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. So Jesus is praying, knowing that he's about to suffer and die. So he goes off to pray in this place where he always does. Like I had never thought about that until Easter, Holy Week this year or last year, where the homily was talking about like, how did Judas know where he was going to be? Because that's where Jesus always went off to pray. This is where he went to spend time with his Father. And so Jesus is praying. He's literally sweating blood because he knows what's coming. He knows that there's this big amount of suffering and torture and all these things that's going to come. And he's in the garden with his apostles. And he walks over to him and he's like, guys, like, I'm praying. I'm trying to be just like Moses was. I'm trying to help win this battle for you guys, for the people of God. And I need you to help me. Like, I'm scared. He was sweating blood. And he asked them, and what were they doing? They were asleep. So then he goes back and he prays again, and then he comes back, and what are the apostles doing? They're asleep. And what's so interesting about this story for me as I was reflecting on it is they were asleep during the prayer time. But then when Judas came with all the people with swords to take Jesus away, then all of a sudden they're wide awake. And Peter stands up and he takes a sword and he cuts the ear off some dude that's trying to take Jesus. So Peter was wide awake and willing to do something for God when it was something active. But he didn't want to take that time to pray. And that hit me like a brick right in between my eyes. It's like so often, like working in ministry, I want to just do the things. I'm wide awake when it's time to do something for Jesus. But then Jesus is like, hey, I want you to spend time with me and pray with me. I'm like, I'm really tired. Just like the apostles, right? And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I'm sure you've had some times in your life that are really similar to that. But I think the difference is, like, whenever we have those times, do we have people like Aaron and her around, or are people around us sleeping? Or when we see somebody who's struggling in their faith, are we sleeping, or do we go and we ask them like, hey, how's your prayer life doing? I had a friend that did that for me a few years ago, and the first couple of times he asked me, I was like, well, it's pretty crappy. It's not real good. But because I knew that he was going to ask me about it, I started improving because I didn't want to look bad, like if for no other reason. But then like my prayer life started to grow, and I actually enjoyed doing it and wanted to do it. But it was all because this guy kept asking me, hey, how's your prayer life? Making those bold questions. So it's interesting because like why pray at all? And there's this whole scripture of where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. So our treasure, our desire actually leads our heart, not the other way around. So if where we spend our time, where we have our desires, our heart's going to be there. So where we need to put our desire and is in God. Obviously, that's where all of our ultimate desires are going to be fulfilled. But that's what we should be striving for. And I say all the time, it's like, God, I don't desire to pray, but I do desire to have the desire. Like, I know this is good. I know that I want it. I don't want it right now, but I desire to desire that. And what this verse is saying is like, that's where my heart is going to go. If I have this desire, if I'm putting my treasure in my time with God, then my heart will surely follow. And there's this whole idea of in prayer, like the more we hang out with people, the more we pick up their little nuances, the more we pick up things from, like, somebody moves from the north down to the south, they'll probably say y'all at some point. They'll lose their northern accent over the course of many months, many years. You know that hanging out with your best friend, you start getting their little quirks. You start saying little things like they say them. You have little sayings you'd never heard before, and then all of a sudden you're saying them all the time. Like, this is what our prayer is like. If we want to be more like God, the more we spend time with him, the more that we will be like God. So that's the whole point of this thing, and that's the whole reason why I wanted to talk about this is going back to the first segment. We need to have time of pre-evangelization, times where we can just love on people, like get them in the door, show them that we love them. We need to have times where we're sharing the faith with people, evangelizing them, sharing just the basic message of the good news with people. And then we need to take them deeper, go from the milk to the meat, like start giving them real food. And then we walk with them, we help them grow in their life of prayer, things like we were just talking about a second ago. And then we can send them on mission to go and share the love that they've received with other people. So like, that's our show for today. It's been great being here with you today. Speaking of sharing love with people, I would really appreciate it if you can go and share love for the show on your social media account, on iTunes. So this podcast is like, so many people aren't familiar with podcasting. It's one of my favorite things in the world. It's where there's a podcast app on your Apple device or on your Android or whatever, where you can just download old shows of my show, of other shows. It's like, podcast is all I listen to anymore. So go search for Forte Catholic on whatever, on your iPhone, on in Google Play or on the iTunes podcast store. Go find it. I would really appreciate it if you could rate the show. Somebody rated the show pretty recently. It says, I love listening to this radio show. The dialogue between Taylor and his guests is enjoyable. The content is insightful and the topics are relevant. So thank you for the few of you that have gone through and rated it. It really helps with the visibility of the show. And please, when you see the post about this episode, even if you're listening live, go share it with your friends. This has been fun. See ya!